We're doing the money plates like we've always done, and that's the end of the discussion. Janine, get your girl and tell her to watch out because you don't know who you're messing with.
Welcome back to Restorative Justice Reflections. I'm David Ryan Barcega Castro Harris, all 5 names for all the ancestors, and today I'm here with Alisha Mernick to dive deep into the restorative themes, or lack thereof, found in Season 1, Episode 7 of ABC's Abbott Elementary, Art Teacher. As always, our conversation here is not a critique of the story or production choices of the creators, but we will highlight how restorative justice can apply to situations like bringing quality arts education into schools and also collaborating to hold power with people instead of having power over them. Hopefully, this will give you some insight about how to apply restorative ways of being into your life in and out of the classroom. If you want to take a deeper look at applying restorative justice to your life, join our Inner Circle community to connect with RJ-minded individuals and get bonus content. Deepen your practice by checking out our courses. And if you want to see this work in your school or organization, invite us for coaching or training on implementing this work. Of course, the links to everything down below. Now let's get to it. Alisha, thank you so much for being here. Introduce yourself in the way that you want to be known by our audience.
Sure. Thanks for having me, David. This is a really fun idea for a podcast. So I'm Alisha Mernick. I'm an art educator, community organizer, activist in the equity world, and I love watching Abbott Elementary.
And when I was thinking about doing this podcast as a whole, thinking about this episode specifically, your intersection of like being an organizer activist and like being an art educator is like in so many ways you're the perfect person to be having this conversation with. So when I reached out, what was it about this episode that made you be like, yes, let's do it on a high level?
On a high level,
yeah.
Just how much of a missed opportunity their approach to art education is. Because when I was watching it, that's where my mind goes, is what a real tragedy a lot of what we see is in arts education in public schools. But in this episode in particular, a lot stood out that I think relates to restorative justice theme. So it's going to be a good dive.
Yeah, and we really appreciate Abbott Elementary, not for showing like this Pollyannish version of schools. Of course, like so much of what they do is reductive because it's a 21-minute sitcom, but like it does get to highlight a lot of the issues and a lot of the things that we would like to see change within the context of our schools. So let's get into the summary of this episode. The A plot, of course, is with the art teacher. When the school art teacher retires, Janine's college friend Sahar is hired as the school's new volunteer art teacher. Sahar and Melissa disagree over the Peter Rabbit project that Melissa has historically been doing. And although Janine agrees with Melissa, she finds it hard to turn down Sahar's ideas. When Sahar makes an impressive art piece using the books that Melissa bought as paper mache, Janine finally stands up to her. In the B plot, which we'll get to later, disappointed in the lack of vegetables in the school's lunches, Jacob convinces Barbara that they should start a school garden despite having very little experience doing so. And Gregory secretly tends to the garden so they can make sure that it thrives. So a lot to unpack here, but let's start with Sahar and Janine.
Today, my friend Sahar is starting. So when I heard we needed a new volunteer art teacher, I called my friend Sahar. She's a successful local artist, and she's so cool.
Janine.
Oh my God, Sahar. Mwah, mwah.
Oh, she French? Good morning, everyone. I'm Sahar.
We know the landscape of arts in schools is dire, and that's very well represented here in Abbott Elementary. But as you were seeing this storyline play out, what came up for you?
Oh, God. So one is like both the teacher who's retiring and this college friend that are coming in. These are both volunteer teachers. There's no one on staff. There's no one who has an education background who is teaching art in this school. And so the kinds of art that they're bringing in are not achieving what quality arts education can actually do for kids. So one, it's like underlining this systemic issue. I really love Abbott Elementary for the same reason. It's like every comedy is actually based on some tragedy, right? Some real tragedy. And they introduce it in a way that's educating the audience, you know, in this kind of like palatable, entertaining, loving way. So in this one, like it's just so quick. It was so quickly mentioned that like these are both volunteers, I think is huge. The way that art is being taught as illustrated by this project is not accomplishing the real goals and outcomes of quality arts ed. And so I'll jump into what that really means and how it relates to restorative justice. Art education is an exercise in empathy, right? It's an opportunity for socio-emotional learning. It's an opportunity for students to learn critical problem solving. And all of these skills ultimately improve community, improve relationships, improve our own awareness of our feelings, our ability to communicate those feelings, and even just interpreting a work of art. It's like you're practicing looking at someone else's communication and interpreting that and understanding the emotional undercurrents beneath it. All of that is really good for supporting the goals of RJ, but none of that is happening in the kinds of art we see in this episode.
Yeah, or in a lot of art that is happening across lots of schools. And so when we have you know, a radical community-based artivist come in to do this work, right? She has a very different set of priorities than, the second grade teachers have. Like, hey, let's create cute bunnies so our kids can take them home and like we can have something that we can all like laugh, smile, and bond over because it's cute, versus like, let's teach them the subversive ways that capitalism has built these entrenched systems of education and like kept you down and kept your minds trapped.
Most people just think of it as this story about a rabbit who steals carrots.
But we're not like most people. We see subtext. It's a story about domesticity and capitalism.
Right. And like neither of those things are inherently bad. Right?
No, not at all. And I love Janine sums it up. She says, Sahar, like this project is about kids practicing fine motor skills, right, in a creative way. Like that's her vision of the goal of art ed. And then Sahar's coming in, and her vision is elevated, right? And like Melissa, I love when Melissa calls her Little Miss MoMA, right? Because her vision of this project is elevated because that's how she views art, right? It underlines this classism problem that art has in this country. This hierarchy of like fine arts versus craft is highlighted here, and in a way that's insulting Melissa for wanting to do a craft with the kids. There's nothing wrong with doing a craft with the kids. There's nothing wrong with engaging the kids and helping you make this installation project. But neither of these approaches has anything to do with creative expression from the kids. The kids have no say in what is about to be made. So what are they really learning? They're learning to follow directions, right? Like even Sahar's vision of radical anti-capitalist transformation and using the past to propel us forward, even that is just getting kids to be her worker bees for her vision.
Right. Like it's almost this like thing that she gets to put in her portfolio where like, hey, I use the labor of these little second graders to like create this wonderful thing. Look at me using the resources, extracting value from the resources that like, Melissa put in, right? When she's using the paper mache out of like the books that Melissa bought with, her own money. And like, that's a whole nother dynamic that gets addressed across the show, right? Without her consent, right? For Sahar, right? It's all about Sahar. It's not really about like making free thinkers. It's like, hey, do your bunny thing, and then like help me paper mache this. It was like I would have been interested to see like the process of Sahar having the kids help. Like we don't know how much they contributed to that. Did Sahar just do that on her own? Like bring in her other friends to like make that look pretty, and then like okay, kids, do your bunny thing. Color the bunnies however you want them to be colored, right? Lots of levels, and like what you're saying about the choice being taken away from the kids who like this is supposed to be about,
Right.
was totally missed.
And I think, this is smooth segue into our, the second thing that I want to talk about, which is this idea that stakeholders are not consulted throughout the episode. And in this particular instance, it's the kids, right? Like the kids should have a voice in what they want to make, what they want to do with the school. Even if they're doing the installation, they should have had some hand in the ideation process and the brainstorming process. We don't get to see any of that. They are purely just workers following directions.
Right. And, again, limits of a 21-minute TV show.
Right.
I wonder if like in the extended cut, there were those moments where we got to see them creatively brainstorming what we want this landscape to look like, right?
Though, with Sahar, I don't know if she would be up for that.
For sure. But like you were saying, as a segue, right?
If you're appreciating this video, like to help us in the YouTube algorithm, subscribe so you won't miss a video, and share it with someone to help us further amplify this work. Now back to the show.
On the B side of this episode, we have a situation where Barbara and Jacob are really dissatisfied with school lunches, as like, arguably justifiably so. And, Jacob and Barbara approach Devin, the cafeteria worker, about like, yo, what can we do about this? Like, how can we make this better?
Hopefully this is what they're serving the children.
Jacob and I are starting a garden to grow some vegetables for the students.
In the magical timeline of a TV show, somehow they were able to produce one little zucchini after a day's work in a community garden that they had set up, right? Building boxes, planting, all of that.
Even calling it a community garden is hilarious. It was literally the two of them. So again, it's like that same issue of, why are you making the garden? Why are you really making this garden? Is it to teach the kids about gardening? Are we giving them this lifelong skill? Are we, they're not engaging anyone else in the process.
And doing it very badly, right? Because Gregory's the one who is ending up like saving the garden. We see how that plays out like much farther down the line. But, their hearts are in the right place. Their hearts, they have good intentions, right? And just like Sahar, just like Melissa in these circumstances, right? People want what is quote unquote best for the kids, right? But how do we go about getting there, right? This lack of input from stakeholders, right, is so present, right? And so you have people taking paternalistic savior mentality routes to getting to achieve their goals, and like we have like pretty poor results, even when like Jacob goes and like, hey, I know that our garden isn't producing everything that it needs to right now, and brings a whole tray of like zucchini prepared from his home to school, like, hey, you can feed this to the kids. Like Devin's immediately like, what are you doing? Right? We can't serve this here. I think there is a harmful way that this phrase can be used, but like, stay in your lane, right? There is, if you don't know what you're talking about, if you don't know what you're doing, like, don't waste your efforts doing something that is someone else's job, someone else's expertise. If you want to like share your, if you want to invest and share and like work together with folks, approach it from the like, what can we do to make it better? Like, how can I support you and the thing that you do like every day, right? Like Devin's not coming in to Jacob's classroom and saying like, this is how you teach history.
But it's clear just in, he throws it out and he says this is a health code violation. Like this very basic content knowledge, because food is content, this content knowledge that Barbara and Jacob don't have, and they could have had if they had collaborated and facilitated this project as opposed to just leading it. Because stay in your lane you're right. It's like one of these kind of loaded phrases, because it is okay to go into somebody else's lane if you're behind them, right? Or if you're alongside them. But when you're walking up front and telling other people to follow you and not consulting and not involving all of the funds of knowledge within that person, like it is saviorist, it's icky.
Yeah, and we hear Barb say, like, I pulled a Janine, right? And Janine's like, the way that Janine has been represented across this show is like, hey, I'm gonna fix it, I'm gonna save it, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna make the situation better, even though I might not have like the best expertise. Like, at least I'm gonna do something, right? And like that's not quite her journey through this episode. Like, Barb is able to recognize that in herself and be like, you know what, like like this was not right. There were better ways to go about this.
Yeah.
Once these plants start blooming, we're gonna be swimming in squash.
And then what? We prepare them? We do not have time. We barely getting by as is. Y'all can make believe on your own time.
So, not the reaction I was hoping for.
Devin's right. We're being foolish.
Barbara.
I cannot believe that I let myself get carried away. Projects like this, they do not work in public schools. I pulled a Janine.
Yeah, for sure. And her response though is it's very fatalist. It's this would never work in a public school, right? And she is this contrast to Janine, who is always hopeful, but in this kind of naive, unprepared, unknowing way. And I think what both of them are missing is that there is a path forward. It needs to involve everybody and draw on everyone's skills and knowledges. And this is where, like, then the community organizer in me is like, we could have turned this into an issue, right? We could have organized around this. We could have involved kids and families, et cetera, in nutrition. But none of that was done, because they did just decide, like, oh, well, we can fix this. And you're right. It is pulling a Janine, because she does the same thing. It's I know how to fix this. I'm going to go above and beyond, bless her heart. But it is rarely successful.
Right. And these things take time, right? Anything that you're trying to do to like implement community change, for example, like implement restorative justice practices, right? It can't just be one person saying, like, this is the way that things are going to be now, and I'm going to be the person who's going to run all the peace circles, teach everyone about restorative justice, build like our school agreements, guidelines, like by myself, right? You've got to take collaborative approaches to all those things. Of course, you as an individual can model those behaviors, right? And invite people to participate in those with you. And sometimes, depending on where you're situated within the hierarchy or political power in your environment, like that might be the only thing that you can do, right? But if you're trying to make this a community thing, roll it out school, right? Like, how are people educated about what you're actually trying to do, right? There's so much confusion about what restorative justice is. People think it's super permissive. It's just people talking and like no consequences coming down, right? So like, how are we making sure that people fully understand what we're meaning when we're saying restorative justice? And then how are we inviting people in to participate in the process, right? It's not something that can just be rolled out as a program, right? You can look up the policies and handbooks and guides that lots of schools or lots of school districts have implemented, but that's not necessarily going to be the thing that is relevant to your school, right? You have to understand the frameworks, and your community has to understand the vision for it, so y'all can work together to make it sustainable. Otherwise, as soon as you leave that school, as soon as you leave that environment, that's going to go with you, right? Barb and Jacob, right? You were saying it's not a community garden, it's a Barb, Jacob, and, like, let's be honest, Gregory garden, which like is not in itself a bad thing, but like, what is the legacy of that project that you want to leave, right? Like, what is the purpose of this? If it's to get like more vegetables at school, like there are less labor intensive ways of doing that, right? Or is it about teaching kids about gardening. Well, the approach that you're going about that is not that at all, right? So being clear about like what you're trying to achieve, and then involving community to make it sustainable is so important. And like, organizing principles 101. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's you want to build an org that can exist without you, right? And that takes buy-in.
Yeah.
And buy-in is not something you can force from people. Buy-in is not something you can educate into people. Buy-in only comes when everybody involved participates in the ideation and coming up with the idea, when coming up with the solution, right? So I think it goes back to the Sahar thing. It's like she came in with her vision of how to fix this perceived problem. And of course there was no buy-in because it was only her idea. So I have to bring it back to arts ed, right? Because so much of what art education is really trying to do is to teach creative problem solving. You make an artwork, doesn't look good at first. You have to look at it, analyze it, figure it out, work with it, revise it, refine it, get feedback, do critique, make adjustments, present it again, right? So it's about this process of almost like a design cycle of revision and feedback from peers. And those are skills that you develop over years and years of practicing the arts. Neurons that fire together, wire together. It takes practice. And so if you have a strong arts education, you are better able to go into a community and, almost wing it. It's like you are playing improv, right? You are looking at all the pieces, you are analyzing the problem in this holistic way, and you are coming up with a creative solution in community. Just like in an arts room where there's critique, you're working with multiple people to decide what the best path forward is. So these skills really translate. They really translate.
It's not about like, hey, what is the brushstroke? What is the material that you're using? Which like are important things to know, right? Right. And the application of that is so important, right? Similarly, like, hey, can you ask these sets of restorative questions, right? Can you set up a circle? Right. Absolutely. Can you do that in a way that is appropriate for the needs of your community? Like that takes practice, right? That takes and inherent to practice is like messing it up, learning to do better. And, when we're trying to, whether it's art education or whether it's restorative justice practice, when we're trying to help people embody these ways of being, these frameworks, these mindsets, rather than just techniques and practices, it's a time investment, right? And not everyone is ready to do that. But if we're not ready to do that, I do think like it is nice that they did that like cool art installation, but like what is the cost? Well, at what cost, right? It is nice that like you can have a circle and then like as a one and done thing, or like introduce restorative justice practices as like a thing that like we'll do on special occasions. But like what is the impact of that? Are you messaging to people that like restorative justice can only be done in this particular way, in this particular set of circumstances by a particular person? Like it only happens when Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so or like whoever person is like the restorative justice coordinator, or is it something that like is integrated into the way that you as a community move? And within the context of schools, I think what I'm left asking you is like, in your experience, right, how has this been done well, whether it's restorative justice or arts education, but these things that aren't like heavily prioritized in mainstream education, right? But like it's time allotment, but like how have you seen it done well?
Yeah, I think with arts and with justice, which I even think of it in my classroom just as relationship, right? It's community and relationship.
Sure.
I think that they really are connected. I think that they work very, very well together, art and relationship, art and community. Because when I think of quality arts, always has some kind of personal expression. It always has some kind of opinion. Students are creating artworks that are reflecting and attempting to shape the world around them. So they are paying attention to the news, to current events, to the school community, to issues in the school community, and they are creating works of art about those things, conceptual works of art. Yes, there's technique. Yes, there's material. Yes, I'm actually teaching them how to make art also, but every work of art is expressive in this way that is socially engaged, right? And then we have critique days where students all get up and they talk about their work and they give each other advice and suggestions, but they also respond to the messages in each other's work. So what this does is this opens up a space for conversations about social justice issue, racial justice issues, gender and sexuality and identity, but also about issues at the school. So I have had students make artworks that are, you know, about sexist dress code at the school. And then it sparks this classroom conversation that then turns into this organizing moment where students are then, what are we going to do? You know, and they're coming up with it together. I'm the facilitator. I'm asking questions. I'm asking follow-ups. I'm asking who wants to respond to this? What do we think of this? I'm charting it on the board, but it's not my ideas ever. But we have very often seen artworks about an issue translate into petitions or requests for meetings with the principal or getting parents involved in something. The arts spark, they create space for social engagement and organizing. They also, through all of this collaboration, really improve the relationships of the kids in that classroom, right? So they all know each other. They know their opinions. They've got practiced debating social justice issues in the classroom in a kind, polite, and academic way. They learn the language to disagree in a respectful way just by discussing the artwork about those issues. So I think it really develops relationship skills. It develops the sense of knowing each other and knowing who each of your peers are in the classroom. I love this moment where like Sahar, sorry, back to the episode, but like Sahar is trying to make this point about like how, you know, Janine, why'd you get into the system, right?
Did you take this job so that you could be part of the system? Or because you wanted to inspire, what's your name?
Bria.
Students like Bria and her friends to be the next generation of free thinkers.
So it's just so on the nose of like, you don't even know these kids. You don't even know their names. Like, this is why I'm saying, I don't think there's a behind the scenes, the kids were involved in the creative process. Sahar doesn't even know these kids' names, right? So relationship and knowing each other and knowing who the people in your classroom are is so foundational to any other kind of, you know, justice work that you want to try to do.
You know, we've seen like the way that this like is not practiced well, the way that this doesn't play out well, and like I think it's pretty representative of some things that may happen in schools across the country. But how have you seen arts education done well, like on a school level? Because I imagine in your classrooms, of course, right? But like on a school level, like how have you seen arts education executed and valued well?
Oh gosh. You complicated it by saying on a school level.
Yeah.
Because I have never really worked at a public school that has had more than a single arts teacher. So already there's this isolation happening. But what I have seen done well is the more contemporary approach to art education in general is leaps and bounds more effective than this cookie cutter kind of art we're seeing Melissa propose, where it's I make the model and you all make a version of this, right? Contemporary art education is much more about teaching the creative process. So we're teaching kids, you know, we're giving them some prompt, and by prompt I mean we're showing them artworks, we're showing them articles, we're showing them, you know, news clips, whatever it is. You're prompting the kids, you're guiding them through the ideation process, thumbnailing, sketching, you're guiding them through the peer formative critique process, which means showing it to a peer, getting feedback, problem solving together. And then you're guiding them through the techniques, materials, and experimentation they need to turn it into a finished work. Yeah. All of that actually teaches kids how to create things. And it is completely different than what Melissa was proposing, where kids are just following directions. They are creating almost like a shoe factory. They are creating copies of what they see as the model.
What's present for me, and I'm going to ask it, but it doesn't feel like the right question to ask, but like, is that asking too much of teachers that aren't like specifically art teachers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but I'm gonna piggyback on that. So right now I'm lecturing at a state university, and in this program, in order to be a teacher, in order to be a social worker, or in order to be a early childhood education specialist, meaning working at a preschool, in order to do any of these education majors, you have to take a class called arts education, children's art, children's craft. So you have to take one full course preparing you to be able to do this. That is not the case in most teacher preparation programs. In most teacher prep programs, they are, they're focused on those core subjects, those testable subjects, right? Maybe language acquisition if they're in a state like California, but for the most part, they are not getting the training that is needed in order to do quality arts ed. It actually isn't more time intensive. It isn't any harder. In a lot of ways, once you get the hang of it, it's way easier than doing one of these I make, we make, you make projects. But it does take some training and some knowledge that the vast majority of our teachers don't come into the school system prepared with.
Yeah. So what is a teacher who's sitting in a classroom, who's situated in a school that doesn't have arts education funding, that doesn't have an art teacher? What are they to do with like all that you just shared with us?
Practical suggestions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look up the visual thinking skills. Visual thinking skills. It's a Harvard Zero project. It is a quick and easy toolbox of strategies you can use, pretty much scripted, to move the kind of art teaching you're doing towards this more critical, collaborative process. There are language, like discussion prompts for helping students discuss and analyze and interpret artwork, which then, of course, flexes those empathy muscles. There are prompts for students to talk about their own work so that they can flex those SEL expressive skills. There's a whole bank, and this is like one of 100 resources I wish I could, recommend right now, but I think it's a very, very good place to start.
Yeah, it's just that one step. And of course, we can link that and a bunch of other things in the show notes and description below. As we bring our analysis of, this episode to a close, right, we see the moments of attempted restoration, attempted repair between Melissa and Sahar, facilitated by Janine. Maybe not exactly a restorative process, but, Janine, bless her heart, does her best. What was it about that made you that lit you up?
I love how poorly it goes, I guess.
Sure.
I love how poorly it goes. I love when Melissa takes her earrings off and hands them to the kid.
Sahar? What is this garden made of?
Oh, that's the best part. It's made out of the Peter Rabbit books.
Nisi?
That says so much about the culture of the school. That says so much about her character. That was so funny. I love when they go into the hallway and Melissa really digs into Sahar, and Janine said, Melissa storms off and Janine says, okay, so what I got from that was,
right,
you don't know who you're messing with. You better back up.
Sahar, we owe Melissa an apology.
Wow, I knew it. I knew you're one of them.
One of who?
A conductor of mediocrity and conformity. I thought it was so cool that you worked in an underprivileged school, but now I see that you don't even care about inspiring the kids. You know what? I hate to say it, but I think you're a conventional thinker.
You know what? You can get out.
So it was just so funny how she tries, right? She tries. It's like she's probably taken one PD workshop about how to do conflict resolution and like tries to use the tools, but just flops. Love that. But then she actually does help, right? She solves the issue. She finds the books to replace the ones that Melissa had to buy. And I think that shows just how much heart she has, how pure her intentions really are in that moment, that she really wanted to make things right with her friend.
Yeah, and I struggle with Janine all through the show. Listeners to the show know, right? Her conflict aversion, like her need for people to be friendly, at peace, nice to each other, is so strong. Her need to people please and be the person to like make things right is so strong. Like that's where we have Barb saying like, I pulled the Janine, right? Because like that is, who she shows herself to be in so much of the show. And it's an opportunity for us to reflect and think like, maybe there are some moments of this that needed like immediate de-escalation, but like what part of this conversation could have happened at a later time where cooler heads could have prevailed? What were the conversations that you could have had immediately with those folks individually trying to figure out needs? And like, Janine did a version of that, but like in our highest version of doing this in a restorative way, there are a number of ways that it could have gone differently, but we got what we got, and there's no one right way of navigating conflict or harm. But these principles of asking people what they need, figuring out how the other folks in the situation were impacted, right? Like what's the impact on the students having witnessed their teacher almost like throw hands with another teacher, and all the other things, like they're more complicated factors. Again, too much for a 21-minute TV show, but another episode of Abbott Elementary full of things to help us reflect. You've heard from us. Now we want to hear from you. Drop your restorative justice reflections in the comments. And if you want to join a live community conversation about our restorative justice lessons from Abbott Elementary, join us for a live event on Monday, July 31st. Link with more info in the description. Before we go, there are questions that everybody answers when they come on. And so if you were pitching yourself as a character on Abbott Elementary to Quinta and the writers, who would you be and what would your story arc be like?
Oh God. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think I'd be pretty similar to Janine. I would be the wacky art teacher. And I there is already kind of a bit that I do in my classroom of the wacky art teacher who's constantly like, but what do you want to make, right? Where there is this complete lack of like skill. There's this perception, right? There's this perception that if an art teacher is so focused on emotion and expression and SEL, that there is no technique or material content knowledge being passed. That's not true. Like my kids make work that looks really good. I think it's all beautiful. They think it's all beautiful. We work on things until they're proud of it, right? But I think the character that would be really charming in this show is that character, the one who's overly concerned with everyone's feelings, whose room is just total chaos, constantly covered in paint, so loud, blaring music that maybe shouldn't be at a school. I think that would be cute. And I think she'd definitely be friends with Janine.
Yeah, and maybe mortal enemies with Barb, the way that you framed what was going on.
No, Barb would not approve of a lot of my approaches, that's for sure.
Beautiful. So from your lips to Quinta and the writer's ears, thank you so much, Alisha. How and where can people support your work in the ways that you want to be supported?
Oh, gosh. Oh, well, so honestly, right now I'm on baby break. I've got a 3-year-old. I've got a 4-month-old. I'm not doing anything right now. But in a couple months, I want you to check out my Substack, which is missmernickart.substack.com, and my Instagram, which is at missmernickart.
Beautiful. So, of course, all of those things will be linked down below. But again, thank you so much, Alisha. We'll be back with another episode analysis, Restorative Justice Reflection, very soon. Until then, take care.